Hello, boys and girls. This week we are going to be working with newspaper jargon. And jargon is kind of a special word you've probably not heard of before. Jargon is the special vocabulary used by people who work at a certain job. Teachers have their own kinds of jargon. Doctors and nurses have their own kinds of jargon. Lawyers have their own jargon. It's just words that you would not know what they mean unless you have either been around or worked in certain professions. This week we're going to be looking at jargon used by those people who work with newspapers. Please go ahead and put today's date, 4/1/19. Make sure you put your name on the paper because all of 5th grade or all of 4th grade is going to be doing this homework and then taking the test at the end of the week. So if you just repeat after me for the words, we have dummy, masthead, beat, scoop, bleeds, crop, window, headline, typo, and stringer. So let's look to see what each one of these means because most of us don't. When I think of the word dummy, I think of a name that we call people when they're acting silly, but that's not what they're talking about here. A dummy is a model of how a page will look. It's almost like a rough draft there. A beat is the area or subject that a reporter covers. That could be the obituaries, that could be weddings, could be political pieces, but those are the types of subjects that they would be covering. Something bleeds, it's when a picture goes to the edge of the page, which you typically don't want. You want a little bit of a margin there, but it's called bleeding when that happens. A widow, I know that a widow is a woman whose husband has passed away, but this isn't what they're talking about here with widow. It is a word or a line by itself at the end of a paragraph because it's all by itself. And the word typo, you're probably familiar with that word. A typo is a mistake in a printed word caused by hitting the wrong letter key. I've been guilty of doing that before. A masthead is the names of a newspaper's publishers and editors. It's where they're listed. It's just like a little area that lists the editors and publishers. A scoop is if a newspaper publishes a big story before anyone else. They get the first scoop. Crop is whenever you cut off part of a picture. A stringer is a reporter who is not on the newspaper staff but sends in stories. And then finally we have headline. The headline of a newspaper article is the title of the story. All right. So for your homework for tonight, you are going to be looking at 7 of these words: dummy, bleed, scoop, typo, crop, beat, and stringer. And your directions say to find and circle 2 other words that almost mean the same thing. Okay? Almost mean the same thing. So, we're not talking about the different meanings of dummy. We're still looking at dummy being a model of how a page will look. Well, a dummy, when we're looking at how a page would look, we're not talking about a doll that sits on someone's lap when ventriloquists are trying to make them talk. It would be a model of how something is supposed to look, or even what we would call a mock-up or a rough draft. Okay, so we just did number 1 together. Make sure you go across the side. Please make sure that you circle 2. For the last 2 here, it says write a newspaper jargon word for each clue. So they give you a clue and you have to write the word. Please make sure you write those and spell those correctly. This is going to be due tomorrow, due Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. Over on the other side, As always, these are where you get the opportunity to show what you know by selecting the correct words to make the sentences make sense. Alright, you will be using all 10 words, and none of them will be repeated here. At the bottom, make sure you're doing part B. You are going to check the correct answer for each one of these. Your writing to learn could possibly give you an extra 5 points. It says, pretend you are a newspaper editor, write a memo to your staff, use at least 3 words in the newspaper jargon. So you'd be pretending like you're the big boss and writing a memo that you would want the people who are working on the newspaper for you to know. If you do not want to do that, that's perfectly fine because it is just for extra credit you can mark through. This side is due Thursday, April 4th. 2019. As always, if you all have any questions, please feel free to let me know.